there. We have some updates with regard to to migrants and where they're being sent. Marco Rubio had said, hey, we're looking beyond El Salvador. There are other countries that we're going to try to deport people into, potentially prison systems in other nations. New York Times had that report that we talked about yesterday with regard to, hey, it looks like they're moving forward with Libya. This became quite urgent. There was a flight that was scheduled. Lawyers got involved. They went to a judge. A judge has now blocked any migrants from potentially being sent to Libya. But Libya's war torn is divided between two different governments. Both of those governments said, hey, we have nothing to do with this. We would not accept these migrants. So anyway, there's a lot that is sort of mysterious and interesting going on there as well. And then we wanted to take a look at these several developments with regard to Trump and his meme coin. First of all, it appears that it is largely foreigners who are pumping big bucks into Trump's meme coin, raising even graver concerns about levels of corruption there. There is some legislation that is moving as well. And then also on the topic of corruption, apparently one of the things that countries are being pressured to do in order to get on the U.S.'s good side is to adopt Starlink. So, and that's being, used in part of the trade negotiations. Jeff Stein did a fantastic report over the Washington Post. Finally, however, Emily's got a big scoop. You want to break down, give us the top line of what you're looking at?
Yeah, so Breaking Points obtained a document from Inside Punchbowl News, and we have basically, we're ready to reveal their entire business plan because for partnerships in 2025, that's the document that we got our hands on, and got some comments from the White House, because you may remember just a couple of months ago, there was a big controversy over the government getting premium subscriptions to Politico. So in light of what we have in this document that Breaking Point's got its hands on, we heard back from the White House about Punchbowl subscriptions. So basically what we're going to be looking at here is Chris I would call it soft corruption. It's just it's just corruption, plain and simple, but it's so banal and mundane here that nobody even blinks or thinks twice about it. But it is so gross. And we have some great excerpts, pictures from this document that we obtained that I think is well worth taking a look at.
Yeah, the documents are not indicative of Punchbowl being particularly unique in terms of the DC ecosystem. They just simply expose how banal and how commonplace these relationships are, and how much money is at stake as well. It really is. It's a fascinating look inside the Beltway media, and specifically the world of these sort of niche newsletters, which are just printing money because they're not that expensive to put together. But the whole business model is, hey, if you can tell advertisers, my tip sheet is read by Mike Johnson, my tip sheet's read by John Thune, my tip sheet's read by Chuck Schumer, then advertisers will pony up big bucks to get their messages just in front of those basically handful of people.
Yeah, in this case, Google, Goldman Sachs, and just our last teaser here, so you stick around for the block, we have the actual price. First of all, we have their email open rates. We have their subscriber numbers, at least the ones that they send to corporate partners or prospective corporate partners. But then we also have the pricing levels that they offer newsletter sponsorships for. And that's what you're really going to want to stick around for, because it will make your eyes pop out of your skull. So make sure to stay tuned for that block.
Yeah. All right. With all that being said, let's turn to the economic news. This broke yesterday evening. We could put this up on the screen. So Trump expected to announce some sort of trade quote-unquote agreement with the UK. Most of the experts are saying this probably isn't going to be a finalized agreement, because it will be more like a framework, including issues that they intend to resolve. But we don't know the specifics at this point. Trump said that he is going to make this announcement in the White House at 10 a.m. He put out a tweet, Truth Social it was, big news conference tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Oval Office, concerning a major trade deal with representatives of a big and highly respected country, the first of many, Trump wrote, and this is, of course, the first of the many trade deals that they were allegedly negotiating, 90 deals in 90 days. So far, we're at now maybe the outlines of one is what we're looking at. There's a lot that's interesting about this. Obviously, they've been under a lot of pressure, Emily, to be able to show something. And the world has been pretty resistant to what they see as, U.S. bullying. Even close allies like Japan have really taken the side of, we are not going to be bullied into some sort of a deal. Much of the world has made some overtures to China. And the whole idea here was, we're going to try to isolate and encircle China. That has not worked out either. The UK is interesting because Keir Starmer, the leader there, is really unpopular. He was just elected prime minister not that long ago. His approval is dramatically underwater. People are not happy with him. They're not happy with the economic situation there. And whereas a lot of liberals, and liberals in Canada, liberals in Australia, have actually really buoyed their standing by opposing Trump, Starmer has taken the opposite path. He has really made a lot of overtures to Trump and has been, aggressively courting him and trying to work out this deal, thinking that if he can blunt some of the impact of tariffs on the UK, that would benefit his country and benefit his political standing. So that is the bet that he has placed, and that's sort of the context within which this framework agreement, whatever this is being negotiated.
Yeah, and like you said, we don't know much yet, but I think Keir Starmer is in the now Mark Carney category as well, where they're recognizing that the economic benefits they can get their own people, because the disadvantages, the costs of this are likely going to be, if they don't handle it diplomatically and in a way that pleases Donald Trump, or where they're at least able to make a deal with Donald Trump, then the costs to their country are going to be way greater than the benefits of sort of making a kind of stand against Donald Trump. And that's not to say Mark Carney actually managed rather cleverly to do both, to be really, sort of diplomatic to Trump and to butter him up, while also putting his foot down and saying Canada will never be for sale. Well, Starmer here got a carve out for high-end British cars, according to Politico at least. So that's, you had Aston Martin, Bentley looking at really disastrous consequences of the 25% tariffs. So I think that's the right bet if you're Keir Starmer, who again is not particularly popular, but maybe this is a way for him to turn a new leaf in the UK. I sort of doubt it. I don't think he necessarily will be able to do that, but it's probably better than him doing nothing or making some type of petulant virtue signal stand while people end up not getting any benefits to the economy.
Yeah, we'll see how the politics play out, because Donald Trump is not popular in, certainly among Keir Starmer's base in the UK. And as I was saying before, Mark Carney, the reason he was able to win was by positioning himself as an oppositional figure to Trump and someone who would be a steady hand. When we talked to David Dole about how people saw him, it wasn't that he was elected with this, you need to aggressively stand up to Trump. But it was more, we feel you're a steady hand who's going to have our interests and not going to kowtow to him. Starmer, potentially because of the way that he has, tried to maintain diplomatic relations with Trump and gone out of his way to do such. The UK has avoided some of the criticism that has been leveled at other European countries. JD Vance famously, went and was really aggressively chiding them about their free speech, et cetera. And so, they've sort of avoided, and certainly they haven't been subject to the 51st state smears that Canada was very, very upset about and continues to be very upset about. So I think maybe some of the fact that Trump has not rhetorically gone after them is also probably because of Starmer's efforts behind the scenes to kind of butter him up. But on the other hand, they still were hit with the same 10% tariffs and other, higher tariffs on things like steel that the rest of the world was as well. So those efforts were not really rewarded in real time. We'll see what comes out, what the specifics are with regard to this particular deal.
Trump needs this for the markets, too, because everyone's waiting for deals. It's not just about the one deal. It's about the one deal showing that there are actual deals coming, and that is obviously yet to be seen. So we will pay attention to that. But Crystal J. Powell, speaking of the markets, Jay Powell popped out yesterday and made his announcement. Yeah,
that's right. So holding interest rates steady and sounding some, very significant warnings about where he thinks the economy is and where it is heading. Let's take a listen to that.
If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment. The effects on inflation could be short-lived, reflecting a one-time shift in the price level. It is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent. Avoiding that outcome will depend on the size of the tariff effects, on how long it takes for them to pass through fully into prices, and ultimately on keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored.
So, Fed chairs, they're always trying to be very neutral and mild-mannered in their comments, but He's sounding a warning about the tariffs. And the tariff position has really put the Fed in a tough bind because, on the one hand, you see slowing economic growth. That's what we saw with the GDP numbers and some other indicators. That would push you in the direction of let's lower interest rates. However, you also see rising inflation. That would push you in the direction of let's lift interest